In the 16th century, fear of the devil led to many outbreaks of the witch hysteria in many parts of Europe. Many Europeans were tried and executed for witchcraft, usually resulting in hangings or burning their bodies at the stake. The people who were mostly accused of witchcraft were those who didn't fit in the norm of Puritan lifestyle, like property-owning widows and unmarried women. The Puritans mostly had their life revolved around the church and had many strong beliefs about the devil being active in the world. When Puritans came to America for religious freedom in 1630, their beliefs came with them. In Massachusetts, 1692, an unwavering conviction in God's word, fear of witchcraft, and the determined superstitions of the devil laid a seed of worry in the minds of the villagers of Salem. The fear that witches walked among men. This mindset resulted in the accusations made and the execution of peers in this small town.
The Salem witch trials in the 1690s do seem very mysterious and hard to understand by modern-day readers and students. How could people have actually been executed, being accused of being witches? Nobody today believes that there are really witches. But they did believe that in the 17th century, not only in Massachusetts, but in Europe. Many people believed that things that went wrong in the world were the result of some magical power. If a crop failed, if there was a terrible storm that destroyed one house but another house wasn't hurt, if somebody became ill, people blamed. They didn't have scientific explanations. They couldn't explain why does lightning strike here and not there. So they explained it by witchcraft, by magic, by some people exercising supernatural powers, really, against their neighbors. The problem with charges of witchcraft is that they can't be disproved. People can confess, but in order to confess, you have to prove you're really confessing, you have to name other people as witches. Most of the people accused of being witches were women, middle-aged women, who had exhibited some form of independence in the society, which was not really desired by men in Puritan society. And charges of witchcraft, to some extent, became a way of keeping women under control by the society. But the whole episode totally snowballed out of control. People began naming others to save themselves. Eventually, quite a few people were executed, and eventually the governor stepped in and stopped it because it was obvious that the judicial system had completely broken down. But it certainly revealed tremendous tensions in Salem society, particularly at a time when Indian warfare was rife. Many of the people involved had been living on the border where there was considerable conflict with Indians in the year or two before then, and this atmosphere of fear and hysteria fueled these charges, which then snowballed out of hand.
In January 1962, in the small town of Salem, Massachusetts, an unusual affliction was endowed upon the infamous town of Salem. It all began when a trio of girls, Abigail Williams, Elizabeth Betty Paris, and Ann Putnam Jr., started acting strangely unusual. The three girls would have unannounced bodily spasms, scream without reasons, and began to toss things around the village at random. A Harvard graduate physician by the name of William Griggs diagnosed the girls' strange behavior as the devil's hand. In January 1692, Betty Paris was the first of the three who began to have strange convulsions and violent quirks. Soon after her sudden change in behavior, the other girls began to show signs of the later to be diagnosed devil's hand. When Sarah was 20, her husband died suddenly, and she inherited all of his debts. Sadly, she was unable to pay off her late husband's debt and was rendered without a home, thereby forcing her to rely on the goodwill and charity of others in Salem. For a time, she lived with hosts, but they eventually discarded Sarah after they exclaimed that they could no longer bear her presence anymore. Sarah Good threatened the families who would not host her in their home. She vowed to the people that she would conjure terrible things among them if they continued to refuse hospitality. Many of the families who had refused soon noticed that their cattle were dying and disappearing. Even her husband said that she was a witch or was going to become one, saying that she was an enemy to all that was good. When in court, she denied ever harming the girls, and they asked her who did, and she blamed Sarah Osborne. Sarah Osborne was the second suspect. Like Sarah Good, her husband died earlier. She also denied everything in the court about the girls. When they asked about Sarah Good, she said she only saw her passing on the streets. She denied being a witch, but said that she thought she might have been bewitched. She told the court that in her dream she saw an Indian-like woman who could have bewitched her. Most did not believe her because people of color did not fit in with the normal witch-accused person, until Ann Putnam accused the family's Indian slave, Tituba, of practicing witchcraft.
Tubata denied of hurting Ann Putnam, but later confessed that a man ordered her to hurt the girls. She said the man also had Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne with him. The man threatened to kill Tubata if she did not torture the girls. After the girls accused Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tubata, everyone was fearing the new herd witchcraft. Many of the people in Salem or in other villages near began being held in trial for witchcraft. The jails were filled with people waiting for trial for the practice of witchery. This outbreak of witchery caused everyone in the little town to turn against each other. Husbands accused wives, townspeople accused other townspeople, families were broken apart. Overall, 200 people were accused of witchcraft in the area. The small town was terrified and thought of the devil in the world. Because of this, the judges took the charge of the problem and started dealing with the witches. Their solution was to kill them. The first person executed was Bridget Bishop on June 10th. After being accused of witchcraft because of her weird ways, like marrying 3 times, Bridget Bishop was one of the many to be executed for witchery. After her, 10 people, including Sarah Good, were all killed on July 10th for witchcraft. After that, on September 22nd, 8 more were killed. And that was the last executed witches of the Salem witch trials. Overall, 24 people died, 19 of them were hanged, 1 died from torturing, and 4 died from jail. In the aftermath, after the trials were done, the memory of what happened still followed the town and its people. Samuel Sewall was one of the judges who commended 19 people to death, later apologized for his participation in the witch trials. In 1706, Ann Putnam apologized, but was only one of the afflicted girls in the convent roll in the executions. Each of the girls lived a quiet, normal life after the incidents, but the act that they were a part of was never forgotten. The town, Salem, will always be remembered for the gruesome deaths of many, and received its place in United States textbooks.